At the peak of the Cold War, the United States and Soviet Union possessed enough nuclear weapons to kill every man, woman, and child on Earth. And then, they kept building more. This is the story of how fear became measured in megatons, how two nations spent trillions of dollars constructing arsenals of annihilation, and how the world lived for 4 decades under the shadow of total extinction. The arms race began in a blinding flash over the New Mexico desert. On July 16, 1945, the Trinity test announced humanity's entry into the atomic age. Within weeks, Hiroshima and Nagasaki lay in ruins, and the United States stood alone as the world's sole nuclear power. American military planners believed this monopoly would last at least a decade. They were wrong by more than half. On August 29, 1949, the Soviet Union detonated its first atomic bomb in the remote steppes of Kazakhstan. American intelligence detected the telltale radioactive signatures within days. The news struck Washington like a thunderbolt. The comfortable assumption of permanent American superiority evaporated overnight. What followed was the most dangerous competition in human history. President Truman immediately authorized development of a weapon 1,000 times more powerful than what destroyed Hiroshima. The hydrogen bomb, a thermonuclear device that used atomic fission to trigger nuclear fusion, represented a quantum leap in destructive capability. On November 1, 1952, the first American hydrogen bomb vaporized an entire Pacific island. The mushroom cloud rose 20 miles into the atmosphere. The Soviets answered less than a year later with their own thermonuclear test. The mathematics of mutual destruction now entered a terrifying new calculus. Military strategists on both sides developed doctrines built on the certainty that any nuclear exchange would be catastrophic for all involved. The concept became known as mutually assured destruction, and its acronym, MAD, captured its essential lunacy. Yet within this madness existed a perverse logic. If both sides possessed guaranteed second strike capability, the thinking went, neither side would dare launch first. This logic drove an endless cycle of escalation. Every new American bomber demanded a Soviet countermeasure. Every Soviet missile required an American response. The numbers climbed with frightening speed. By 1960, the American arsenal contained roughly 18,000 nuclear warheads. The Soviets, desperate to close the gap, accelerated their own production. The Cuban Missile Crisis of October 1962 brought the world to the brink. For 13 days, American and Soviet leaders stared into the abyss of nuclear war. Soviet submarines in the Caribbean carried nuclear torpedoes, and at least one came within a single officer's vote of launching. American bombers flew toward their fail-safe points, waiting for orders that mercifully never came. The crisis passed, but its lesson was contradictory. Some saw proof that deterrence worked. Others recognized how close blind luck had come to replacing rational calculation. Rather than slowing the arms race, the 60s and 70s saw it accelerate. Both superpowers developed multiple independently targetable re-entry vehicles, allowing a single missile to strike several cities simultaneously. Submarine-launched ballistic missiles prowled the ocean depths, virtually undetectable, ensuring that even a devastating first strike could not prevent retaliation. The Soviets deployed mobile launchers that could survive an initial attack. The Americans hardened their silos and dispersed their forces. By 1986, global nuclear stockpiles reached their horrifying peak. The United States possessed approximately 23,000 warheads. The Soviet Union had roughly 40,000. Combined, these weapons contained the explosive equivalent of 1 million Hiroshimas. Military analysts calculated that the existing arsenals could kill the entire human population multiple times over. The concept of overkill entered the vocabulary of strategic planning, treating the end of civilization as a mathematical abstraction. The economic toll of this competition staggered the imagination. The United States spent approximately $5 trillion on nuclear weapons and their delivery systems during the Cold War. The Soviet Union, with a smaller economy, devoted an even larger percentage of its national wealth to the nuclear enterprise. Some historians argue this burden contributed significantly to the eventual Soviet collapse. The human cost extended beyond economics. Thousands of uranium miners developed cancer. Communities near test sites suffered elevated rates of leukemia and thyroid disease. Radioactive contamination poisoned vast tracts of land in Nevada, Kazakhstan, and the Pacific Islands. The bomb-making facilities at Hanford and Chelyabinsk became environmental disasters requiring centuries to remediate. When the Berlin Wall fell in 1989, the immediate threat of superpower nuclear war receded. Arms reduction treaties gradually brought the stockpiles down from their insane peaks. Yet even today, the United States and Russia maintain roughly 5,000 warheads each, more than enough to render human civilization unrecognizable. The arms race stands as perhaps the strangest chapter in military history. Two nations built weapons they could never use, accumulated destructive power far beyond any rational purpose, and justified it all through a logic of deterrence that could never be proven until it failed. For 40 years, humanity balanced on a knife's edge, trusting that sanity would prevail over accident, miscalculation, and human error. The weapons built during this era still exist. The missiles still wait in their silos. The submarines still patrol the silent depths. The arms race may have slowed, but its legacy endures in every warhead that remains ready for launch within minutes of an order. Those who study this history do not do so for entertainment. They do so because the stakes were nothing less than everything. Understanding how we arrived at the nuclear precipice remains essential knowledge for anyone who hopes we never return there. If examining the machinery of war and the decisions that shaped our world matters to you, this channel exists for that purpose. Subscribe and continue the journey through history's most consequential conflicts.